So one major thing, or one thing that is challenging for people and can bring people to a wall, is the level of carbohydrates and sugars that they are currently intaking. So on the program, we do talk about things like blue corn chips, and we've got grains on the program like millet, quinoa, maybe a little bit of brown rice now and again. And then, obviously you've got things like starchy vegetables. So we do recommend now and again some sweet potatoes. Carrots are actually quite starchy. Things like cassava, etc., etc. And what people will realize is that if they'll do the program for 6 months, and they'll obviously have massively reduced their sugar and carbohydrate intake because the program is generally quite low in it. However, their bodies are so ill, their bodies are so sick, that although there's been major improvements, it will get to a point whereby the body's basically saying, "Look, I've healed as much as I can for these past 6 months. However, I can't make that next step. I can't remove this excess copper. I can't remove this excess nickel because I've hit a wall." And the wall is that you're actually consuming just too many carbohydrates and sugars at the moment, for what I can handle. I'm talking in the perspective of the body here. Um, but yeah, but then usually, if you look at your hair analysis test, especially, you might get an elevated calcium magnesium ratio. Even though you're doing the program really well, your ratio might be elevated, which is a sign that you might be overeating on carbohydrates and sugars. This is a sign that your particular body, your individual body, is still struggling, and this can be a wall. So I hit a wall, and I realised that I could feel that this was the issue. So I personally had to remove grains. I had to stop drinking sort of raw milk. I had to stop eating, or over consuming sweet potatoes and starchy vegetables. And it got to a point where, for me personally, I was just eating vegetables and meat, which is obviously not recommended. But however, I that was my wall that I was hitting, because I was so extremely sensitive to sugars and carbohydrates. So once I started doing that, I could feel my body moving forwards again. And then the next wall that I could feel, so let's just imagine that another layer was peeled off, and I could keep moving forwards in my healing. I could all of a sudden, my EMF sensitivity, I could feel it. It's really weird how the body sort of can numb itself um, from various things, or you're just not fully aware of it because you've got so many other symptoms going off. But once these symptoms sort of deal with themselves and they sort of peel off like layers, this the layer underneath sort of rises to the top, and you can feel it way more powerfully. So then for me it was EMFs, and I realized that my body was not able to move forwards because I was sensitive to EMFs, and my body was basically telling me, look, you know, we've made all this progress, but I cannot get this rest of the copper out because all night I'm stressed out, not sleeping very well because of the EMFs. So for me personally, I had to build myself a Faraday cage. It ended up being a solid metallic aluminum box that I had to sleep in. And as soon as I managed to crack the Faraday cage, it took a bit of time, and I have spoke about it in previous videos. I could feel my body rest from the EMFs, and it was like, oh, thank God for that. And I managed to jump over that fence. I managed to break through that wall, and then that's when actually I had a big copper dump. Um, so if it weren't for tweaking things, I wouldn't have been able to move forwards. Other walls that people run into, mold toxicity is another wall that people often need to deal with. There's sometimes walls whereby we actually talk about it quite a lot in the program, but for some reason it's just not sunk in too well. So, some people are still working too much, for example, and they just don't feel like they're moving forwards. And, something I actually discussed yesterday, which I think is quite important to make a point of, is that when I first started the program, um, you know, over a decade ago now, the recommendation for the diet was actually mono meals. Well, uh, basically just eating one type of vegetable, and then you've got your meat and whatever else you put on there. So it would be broccoli and chicken, cauliflower and lamb, carrots and chicken thighs or whatever, or basically just one vegetable. And I personally find that that was a very very uh, it was better in many ways because it caused less stress on the digestive tract. The reason why Dr. Wilson ended up changing it from mono meals to a mixture of loads of different vegetables is because he ended up finding out that people was literally just eating one vegetable all of the time. So broccoli all of the time and or cauliflower all the time, and they wasn't mixing it up, so they getting a different nutrients and stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, eating a medley of vegetables like what's recommended now is definitely more tasty, and you do get a lot of nutrition all at once. But I do think, in terms of putting stress on the body, and people are so sick at the moment. I personally found that the mono meals was much was easier for the body, if that makes sense. The body wasn't having to digest all of the different medleys of vegetables. It just was dealing with one vegetable and meat, and it was kind of easier as well in terms of like cooking and stuff because you wasn't having to chop up like 8, 9, 10, 11 different types of vegetables. So it definitely was much easier. So basically what I'm trying to say is that would also be, when I come into issues with clients where they're hitting walls, I will often say to them, well, I think we should maybe try mono meals temporarily, until we can sort of get you over them, get you through them walls. Now, it can be quite confusing for practitioners. It can be frustrating for clients. It can be frustrating. It can be annoying, and it's easy. It's quite easy to sort of say to the practitioner, I'm not moving forwards. Like, I don't think the program's working particularly very well. But in reality, that individual is suffering from something that's holding them back, and like I say, it could be like they're exposed to mold. They've got EMF sensitivity. They're overdoing it on sugars and carbohydrates for their particular body. For some people, I've ended up finding out that they've been doing the program amazingly, and sometimes I'm like, I don't understand why this person's not moving forwards, and then I end up finding out that they've been losing sexual fluid, like every day, and I'm like, man, that's literally one of the worst things. Like, no wonder you're not moving forwards. And then as soon as I've got them to stop doing that, that's when the ball starts rolling again. If that makes sense. But there's other walls on the program that just cannot be. It's just life happens. A bereavement might happen. A big financial stress might occur. Divorces. And I mean, sometimes divorces are actually beneficial in the long term, but short term they can they're not good for the body. So yeah, so basically, whenever you feel like you're hitting a wall, you've got to not necessarily blame the program. We might need to tweak the program, and you might need to look at yourself and figure out, are you doing things that might be holding you back somewhat, and And that's that. I will also mention, and it's a difficult topic if I'm being honest, but it's something that should be spoke about, is that, you know, the older you are, the less vitality and energy you have got, and you do, you know, people do find it more challenging to heal quickly. And you know, healing is a slow process anyway, and that's another thing for people to understand, is that healing takes time. You know, like just changing zinc, for example. You know, many, you know, it's often talked about, can just take at least a year. Then you've got to balance copper out. You got to remove the lead, remove the nickel, remove the arsenic. You know, remineralize the cells with, you know, the electrolytes. You know, increasing phosphorus. So, you know, the body can't actually remove all of the toxins at once. If it did, it would probably kill itself, if I'm being completely honest with you. Um, so it has to go through this slow process, and the body's intelligent, so it's like, right, I'll deal with some mercury now. I'll deal with some adrenal healing. I'll deal with this issue that's going off in the liver with liver congestion. So you know, healing takes time, but I do think there are things that you can that I've personally found that I think can speed up the healing process. One of them is liver flushes. I have seen people who've been stuck chronically for years and years, and as soon as they start doing the liver flushes, maybe once every 4 months for 2 to 3 years, things can really, that can sort of move the needle a little bit. Yeah, so sometimes hitting a wall, and I think it's maybe rarer, but sometimes it's about like putting more fuel on the fire. So it might be a case of increasing sauna time. It might be a case of, you know, if you're not doing the enemas every day, do the enemas every day. It might be a case of, you know, do you have a cheeky, you know, few glasses of wine at the weekend thinking you can get away with it? That might have to, unfortunately, get dropped. Um, yeah, so all of these, you know, things that need to be accounted for. So yeah, the liver flushes I do find helpful, and I will talk about the LifeWave X39. You know, I do believe that there's massive healing potential in light for therapy, and the LifeWave X39 patches does use a, you know, photobiomodulation, which is you know, light therapy. And I found it amazing when I first used the LifeWave X39 patch, which is a patch that increases your body's own stem cells. And I think I generally find that if older people use the patches, they are more beneficial, because older people, their stem cells are naturally much more lower than a younger individual. I'm not saying the X39 is going to work for everyone, but you know, it's just one of them products that comes out now and again, and you just hear the feedback, you try it yourself, and it's like, wow, this is actually pretty amazing. Um, so yeah, I think that's everything for this video. Obviously, if you like to work with me, then link is in the description. Here, go to www.htmapro.com/Lewis Moon, or email me lewis@lifelabshtma.com. Thanks for watching. I do enjoy reading your comments and answering any questions. Please like, subscribe, and unfortunately we have been shadow banned by YouTube. So if you do feel like you want to share this video around, that's going to help a lot with our exposure on the platform. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll